But while Maduro prevailed in this border showdown, conditions inside the country remained deeply unfavorable to him. He is still immensely unpopular within Venezuela, where he has overseen one of the most catastrophic economic disasters in Latin American history, a calamity that has led a tenth of the population to leave the country, largely because of shortages of food and medicine. Further damage was done to his image on Saturday as he denied aid to suffering Venezuelans. Guaido, for his part, has galvanized his country, and more than 50 other nations have recognized his claim to the presidency. The Trump administration, a vocal supporter of Guaido, has issued crippling sanctions against Maduro's state oil company. A dog sits among Colombian soldiers arriving to the Simón Bolívar International Bridge in La Parada, near Cúcuta, Colombia, on the border with Venezuela, early on Sunday. Credit. APA's Vice President Mike Pence will arrive on Monday, U.S. time, in Colombia, where he plans to meet Guaido and intends to announce concrete steps to further pressure Maduro's government. That could include more punishing sanctions. Still, even if few doubted that the opposition's resolve would be lost over its failure to deliver the food and medicine, Saturday seemed like a turning point with new talk of a need for foreign intervention. Guaido, a 35-year-old who had emerged onto the national stage only in recent months, had sought a political weapon in the arrival of international aid donations. He announced Saturday as the day of an aid avalanche, in which his supporters would defy the president and break his control of the borders. The presidents of Colombia, Chile and Paraguay joined the effort, along with British billionaire Richard Branson, who flew to the border to attend a concert where a lineup of Latin pop musicians urged that the aid be allowed through. Yet by day's end, the avalanche was more like a drop in the bucket. Some of the supplies, instead of reaching Venezuelans in need, had been burned after crossing from Colombia. Maduro, seeing the aid as undermining his authority, had declared that his country was not a beggar and did not need it. Government forces and allied groups backed up that message with violence, bringing condemnation from the United Nations on Sunday. People gather near a destroyed truck on the Simón Bolívar International Bridge near the border with Venezuela and Cúcuta, Colombia, on Sunday. Credit. Bloomberg thwarted at the border, the opposition began rallying around the banner of foreign action to topple Maduro. Before the meeting with Pence and other regional leaders in Bogotá on Monday, Guaido wrote on Twitter that, "We must keep all options open for the liberation of our homeland." Julio Borges, another opposition leader, said he would ask for the use of force at that meeting. U.S. President Donald Trump has raised some hopes for such an intervention, saying that, "the twilight hour of socialism has arrived in the Western Hemisphere." But the U.S. rhetoric was over the top, said Charles S. Shapiro, a former ambassador to Venezuela, adding that the statements may have led some in the opposition to believe that military assistance would be on the way if Maduro blocked the aid. Venezuelan migrants under the Simón Bolívar International Bridge plead for people to support them with food and water so they can continue protesting in La Parada near Cúcuta, Colombia, on Sunday. Credit. APA's those shipments were stymied. Images of violence marked Colombia's border bridges on Sunday. Near the Santander Bridge, where aid had been burned the day before, dozens of young men hurled stones at Venezuelan security forces and erected barriers. Those scenes, however, were ones that the opposition had sought to avoid. Major protest movements in 2014 and 2017 started off as peaceful demonstrations, but as the weeks wore on, they were overtaken by groups largely composed of young men who clashed with security forces in the streets. In 2017 alone, the clashes resulted in the deaths of more than 100 people on both sides. Loading Guaido's movement had appeared to avoid street violence and requests for foreign military intervention. After declaring himself president on January 23 to the cheers of crowds, he had amassed hundreds of thousands of supporters on the streets of Caracas, the capital, and other cities in largely peaceful rallies. His strategy was rooted in a mix of civil disobedience and international pressure, urging Maduro's military to abandon him, rather than seeking an outside military campaign to topple him. The nonviolent character of these protests is absolutely key in making a difference, said David Smiled, a senior fellow at the Washington office on Latin America. When there's fighting, it doesn't go well for a simple reason. Once these protests get violent, they will be no longer massive. Venezuela crisis Nicolas Maduro, Donald Trump, Juan Guaido analyses.